Do you get so anxious and fearful before competition that it affects your performance? Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Holm. Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Psychology Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to answer a question from Lisa. Here's what Lisa asked me. I am always so anxious and full of fear before every match. I think I have to dominate the match. I'm scared of the opinions of other people because I want to go pro and I want others to see me as having the ability to go pro. Before I answer the question, please like the video, subscribe to the podcast if you're not already subscribed, and also hit the notification bell. This is a super common issue that we have with the athletes that we work with here at Peak Performance Sports. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of worry before they compete. Now, we start from the perspective of why are you fearful or why are you anxious before you go compete? Isn't sports supposed to be fun? Aren't you supposed to enjoy sports? Athletes who are highly motivated and competitive and want to do well really badly, those are the athletes that have the most anxiety because they worry about it would be so awful if I fail after putting in all this time and effort to being good at my sport. So that's where we start, is we want to find out what's the underlying fear of failure with you and then go from there. Well, what do I mean by the underlying fear of failure? Often in our work, there's two types of fear of failure. One is worrying too much about what others think, which you indicated in your question. And the other one is putting in all the time and effort and not getting the payoff. We call that the payoff syndrome for athletes. Those are the two main types of fear of failure we see with athletes. You always have to start from that perspective of what is sabotaging you and creating that anxiety before you go and play. One quick note though, keep in mind that pregame jitters are highly natural and normal for athletes. So we don't want to confound pregame jitters with anxiety or performance anxiety in this case. Performance anxiety in this case is based on fear of failure. And that's why you feel anxious before you go and compete. You're worried about disappointing others or others not seeing you as that pro caliber that you indicated in your question. So that's where you have to start. If I'm going to assume that you're worried about how others are going to perceive the match outcome. If it's a lesser player, maybe you have to blow that player off the court, for example. Or if it's someone that you're paired with that's at your level, maybe you feel like in that instance that you have to win. In either case, it's a lose scenario for you, because you're anxious about how others are going to perceive the outcome of the match. And that's where we begin with our athletes, is we like to talk about what's the underlying issue that's creating the anxiety. You don't have anxiety for anxiety purpose. You don't have anxiety because you're playing in a match. You don't have anxiety because people are watching. Well, maybe you do in that case. You have anxiety because how you're interpreting the situation, it's threatening for you in some way. And if it's threatening for you, that's going to cause you to play tight, tentative, feel anxious, confused in your head, and then you're not going to perform as well as you do in your practice situations. And that's where we come in as mental coaches, is helping athletes take their practice more readily to competition so they can perform up to their capability that they show in practice. So in this case, how do you do that? Well, first you have to understand that it doesn't matter what others think when you go and compete. You can't have that on your mind because that's not going to allow you to get into the flow. To get into the flow, you have to be totally immersed into what you're doing in the moment, which means you have to play one shot at a time, 1 point at a time, and not worry about the consequences of that shot, not worry the consequences of that point, not worry about that outcome of that particular game. And in addition to that, you have to put a bubble around the court so that you don't even care what others are thinking outside of the court. It just has to be you and your opponent, and that's it. So we start from the perspective of it really doesn't matter. You have to focus on the process and compete and do your job on the court that you've trained yourself to do, and you got to throw away all these other distractions or worries about what others might think if you don't perform up to your capability or you don't blow someone off the court or dominate that day. So it's not really about domination. It's about you executing 1 point, 1 shot at a time out there and doing the best that you can with full confidence and trust. Then you allow the results to take care of themselves. Hope that's helpful. If you want more information, jump over to peaksports.com. You can check out our one-on-one mental training programs. We have 3 qualified and certified mental coaches here that can help you with your mental game and taking your practice game to competition more readily. In addition, sign up for our newsletter by downloading our free ebook there at Peak Performance Sports, peaksports.com. Thanks for your question.